I needed the job. Simple as that. 3 months behind on rent, a check engine light that never went off, and my mom's medical bills piling up in Portland. I was desperate. That's how I ended up at Super Save at 10:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, waiting for my first overnight shift to start. The store was one of those massive big box places where you could buy anything from milk to tires. During the day, it was packed with families pushing carts and employees in navy blue polos. At night, it was just me, a couple other night stalkers, and 50,000 square feet of fluorescent lit retail space. My manager, Ernest Wagner, met me at the employee entrance. He was a short, stocky guy with thinning gray hair combed over in the most obvious way possible. His shirt was ironed within an inch of its life, and his tie looked like it was choking him. Kenny Schmidt? He checked his clipboard. Right on time, good. Yes, sir. I tried to sound enthusiastic, like working overnight retail was my dream job. Follow me to my office for orientation. I followed him through the empty store. Our footsteps echoed on the polished concrete floors. Most of the lights were dimmed except for the main aisles, giving the place a weird, hollow feeling. Wagner's office was a cramped room behind the customer service desk. He gestured for me to sit in a plastic chair while he settled behind his desk. Your paperwork is in order. I see you have retail experience. 2 years at Target, 1 at Walmart. I didn't mention I'd been fired from both for attendance issues. Depression's a bitch like that. Good. He shuffled through some papers. Night shift is different, quieter. We're open 24/7, but we get maybe 5 customers between midnight and 6 a.m. Your main job is stocking and inventory. Got it. He handed me a blue polo with the store logo. Uniform. Khaki pants, black shoes, nothing fancy. No problem. Then he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a laminated card. It was about the size of an index card with typed text that looked like it had been printed on a crappy office printer. These are additional store protocols, he said, sliding it across the desk. Keep this with you at all times. I picked it up, expecting the usual corporate bullshit about customer service and theft prevention. Instead, I read, 1. If you hear crying between midnight and 3 a.m., turn up the store radio and continue working. Do not investigate. 2. When a customer asks for pool chemicals, direct them to aisle 47. Return to the break room and lock the door until Africa by Toto plays on the store radio. 3. Do not make eye contact with anyone wearing a blue jacket. Continue working as normal until they leave. 4. If the power goes out, sit in the electronics department until it returns. Do not accept flashlights from other employees. I looked up, waiting for Wagner to crack a smile, tell me it was some stupid joke they played on new hires. But his face was dead serious, his eyes fixed on mine. Is this for real? I asked. He tapped the card with his index finger. Follow these rules exactly. No exceptions. But there is no aisle 47. The store only goes up to... I'm aware of the store layout, Mr. Schmidt. His voice got tight. Just follow the protocols. I figured it was hazing. Some weird night shift tradition to mess with the new guy. But something about Wagner's expression made me uneasy. He looked genuinely concerned. What happens if I don't follow them? I asked. Wagner's face twitched. That's not an option. Keep the card with you. Memorize it if you can. He stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. Your shift starts in 10 minutes. Janet will show you the stocking procedures. My first night was pretty normal, all things considered. Janet was a middle-aged woman with bleached blonde hair who'd been working nights for 15 years. She showed me how to use the inventory scanner where the break room was and which bathrooms didn't have weird plumbing issues. Around 1:47 a.m., I was stocking cereal in aisle 7 when I heard it. A baby crying. It was faint but unmistakable, coming from somewhere near the toy section. I froze, remembering the first rule on that stupid card. The crying continued, soft and pitiful. You hear that? I asked Janet, who was working the next aisle over. She didn't look up from her inventory scanner. "Turn up the radio, Kenny." "But it sounds like the radio." Her voice was flat. "Turn it up." I walked over to the portable radio sitting on a stack of boxes and cranked the volume. Some 80s rock song blasted through the store, drowning out the crying. 5 minutes later, the crying stopped. Janet acted like nothing had happened. At 2:15 a.m., a customer walked in. This was weird enough. Who shops at 2 in the morning? But the guy looked even weirder. Tall, thin, wearing jeans and a t-shirt despite it being October in Michigan. "Excuse me," he said, his voice oddly monotone. "Where are your pool chemicals?" My stomach dropped. Rule number 2. I glanced at Janet, who was suddenly very interested in arranging soup cans. "Aisle 47, I said, pointing toward the back of the store. "All the way at the end." The man nodded and walked in that direction. I watched him go, then remembered the second part of the rule. I hurried to the break room, my heart pounding for no reason I could explain. Once inside, I locked the door and sat at the table, feeling like an idiot. 20 minutes passed. Then, through the break room speakers, Africa by Toto started playing. I unlocked the door and went back to work. The customer was gone. Janet never mentioned it. By my third shift, I was starting to think the rules weren't just hazing. They were too specific, and everyone followed them too carefully. I was in hardware, restocking screwdrivers, when I noticed a guy in a blue jacket browsing the power tools. He was average height, dark hair, pale skin. Nothing remarkable except for his jacket, bright blue like the card had warned about. Rule 3. No eye contact. I kept my head down, focusing on the screwdrivers. From my peripheral vision, I could see him moving closer. He picked up a drill, put it down, picked up another. "Excuse me," he said. I didn't look up. "Can I help you find something? Do you have any Phillips head screwdrivers?" I pointed to the display right in front of me, still not making eye contact. "Right here, sir." He didn't take one. Instead, he just stood there. I could feel him watching me. For the next hour, as I moved from hardware to automotive to gardening, he followed me. Always at a distance. Always with some pretense of shopping. I never looked directly at him. Finally, around 4 a.m., he walked to the loading dock door, which should have been locked, pushed it open, and left. I asked Janet about him later. "Johnny Parsons," she said, like that explained everything. "He comes in a few times a week. And we're not supposed to look at him because..." She shrugged. "It's just the rules." On my 5th shift, the power went out. 1 second I was scanning inventory and housewares. The next, we were in complete darkness. The emergency lights kicked on a moment later, casting everything in a dim red glow. I remembered Rule 4 and made my way to electronics, bumping into displays along the way. When I got there, I sat on a stool behind the counter and waited. About 10 minutes later, someone approached. In the red emergency lighting, I could make out a store uniform. "Need a flashlight?" A woman's voice. She held out a heavy-duty flashlight. I shook my head. "No thanks. I'm good." She didn't leave. For almost an hour, she stood there in the dim red light watching me. I pretended to be busy organizing cables, my skin crawling the entire time. When the power finally came back on, I looked up to thank her for the company, but she was gone. I hadn't heard her leave. Later, I noticed security cameras in corners of electronics where I was pretty sure there hadn't been any before. And they seemed to follow me as I moved. After my 7th shift, I was walking to my car when someone called my name. "Kenny, wait up!" A woman jogged across the parking lot toward me. She was maybe mid-30s, with curly black hair pulled back in a ponytail and glasses. She wore the same navy polo as me, but looked way less rumpled. "I'm Joyce," she said, slightly out of breath. "Webster, I work day shift." "Oh, hi." I wasn't in the mood for small talk at 7 a.m. "Listen." She glanced around the empty parking lot. I need to ask you something. Do you have one of these? She pulled out a laminated card from her pocket. It looked just like mine, but when she held it up, I could see the rules were different. 1. If you hear humming between 9 a.m. and noon, engage in conversation with the source. Ask about their day. 2. When Johnny Parsons visits, blue jacket, maintain eye contact at all times. Answer all questions truthfully. 3. If Anna Gonzalez asks for help, tell her you're busy. Do not assist her under any circumstances. 4. During power outages, remain at your register. Accept any items offered to you. I pulled out my card and showed it to her. Mine's different. She nodded like she'd expected this. I figured. Night shift and day shift have opposite protocols. Why? I don't know exactly, but I've been watching. When you avoid something at night, we engage with it during the day. When we ignore something, you interact with it. That doesn't make any sense. Joyce pushed her glasses up. It's a pattern. Like we're creating some kind of, balance. Wagner knows more than he's telling us. I thought about the crying, about Johnny Parsons, about the woman during the power outage. Who's Anna Gonzalez? I asked. Joyce's face went pale. You haven't met her yet? Lucky you. She checked her watch. I've got to go. But we should talk more. Compare notes. As she walked away, I stood there in the cold morning air, staring at my stupid laminated card with its stupid rules. Whatever game the store was playing, I was caught in the middle of it, and I still had no idea what the hell was going on. I'd been working at Super Save for about 2 weeks when Joyce and I decided to team up. We'd been meeting in the parking lot after my shifts, comparing notes on our weird rule cards and trying to make sense of it all. The plan was simple. We'd coordinate our responses to the store's entities and see what happened. If I followed my night protocols and she followed her day ones, maybe we could figure out what the hell was going on. So we're agreed, Joyce had said during our last parking lot meeting. If Anna shows up during your shift, you help her, contrary to your card. I'll avoid her during mine. We'll see if breaking the pattern reveals anything. It seemed like a solid plan at the time, but that was before everything went to shit during my 9th shift. I was restocking tomatoes and produce around 2:30 a.m. when I felt it, that weird prickling sensation on the back of my neck that told me I wasn't alone. I turned slowly, already knowing who I'd see. Anna Gonzalez stood by the banana display, watching me. She wore that same white dress she always did, her dark hair moving slightly even though there wasn't any breeze in the store. Her amber eyes seemed to glow under the fluorescence. According to my rule card, I was supposed to direct her to aisle 47, which didn't exist, and then lock myself in the break room. According to my agreement with Joyce, I was supposed to help her instead. I took a deep breath. Can I help you find something? Anna tilted her head, studying me like I was some kind of science experiment. No, Kenny Schmidt. I don't need your help tonight. My stomach dropped. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was supposed to ask for something. Cleaning supplies, usually. And I was supposed to help her find them instead of sending her to a non-existent aisle. Are you sure? I tried again, my voice cracking slightly. I can show you where anything is. Anna's face changed then, her expression hardening. You're breaking the rules, Kenny. That's not how this works. Fuck. This was bad. I took a step back, bumping into the tomato display. A few rolled off and hit the floor with soft thuds. I should go, I said, already backing away. Yes, Anna agreed, her voice suddenly coming from behind me, even though she was still standing in front of me. You should run to the break room now. I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted, sprinting through the empty store toward the employee break room at the back. I could hear footsteps behind me, keeping perfect pace with mine no matter how fast I ran. I slammed the break room door shut and locked it, my heart hammering against my ribs. Almost immediately, there was a gentle knock. Kenny, Anna's voice came through the door. Kenny Schmidt of apartment 4B at Ridgewood Apartments. 3 months behind on rent. Your car needs a new transmission. Your mother in Portland is still waiting for you to call her back about her medication. My blood turned to ice. How the fuck did she know all that? Your lease is up in 6 weeks, she continued, her voice somehow coming from both outside the door and inside the room simultaneously. Where will you go when they evict you, Kenny? I pressed my back against the wall, as far from the door as possible. Leave me alone. Your mother's cancer is back. She hasn't told you yet. She doesn't want to worry you. Stop it, I shouted, covering my ears. The knocking continued, perfectly rhythmic. Tap, 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 like a metronome. According to protocol, Africa by Toto should play over the store speakers soon, signaling it was safe to come out. That's how it had worked before. But minutes stretched into an hour, and there was nothing but silence and that steady knocking. After 2 hours, the knocking finally stopped. I waited another 15 minutes before cautiously approaching the door, pressing my ear against it. Nothing. I unlocked it and peeked out. The hallway was empty. I stepped out, looking both ways. No sign of Anna, but something was wrong. The store felt different. I walked back toward produce, and that's when I noticed it. Everything was in the wrong place. The tomatoes were now where the cereal should be. The bananas had been moved to the paper goods aisle. Every single item in the store had been rearranged. I spent the rest of my shift trying to make sense of it, mapping the new layout. Toys were now where electronics had been. Clothing was mixed in with automotive supplies. It was like someone had taken the entire store's inventory and shuffled it randomly. When Ernest Wagner arrived at 6 a.m., he didn't even seem surprised. "Protocol violation?" he asked, looking at the misplaced merchandise. I nodded, not wanting to admit I'd deliberately broken the rules. "Clean it up before you leave," he said, then walked to his office without another word. It took 3 hours of overtime to get everything back where it belonged. By the time I dragged myself to my car, I was dead on my feet. I crashed as soon as I got home, not even bothering to take off my shoes. My phone woke me around noon. It was Joyce. "Kenny, are you okay?" She sounded panicked. "Yeah," I mumbled, still half asleep. "Just tired. Had to clean up a mess after my shift." "Something's happening," she said. 3 people quit today, just walked out in the middle of their shifts." That woke me up. "What? Why?" "They saw Johnny. Not just one Johnny, multiple Johnnies, all at once. 3 of him, walking through housewares together." I sat up. "That's not possible." "Tell that to the people who quit," Joyce said. "And that's not all. Wagner gave me another rule card this morning." "Another one? What does it say?" "It says to count the Johnny Parsonses if we see more than one. Report to management immediately if more than 3 appear simultaneously." She paused. "And there's something about Anna, too. If she shows up during daylight hours, we're supposed to check the basement storage area." "We have a basement?" I'd never seen any stairs leading down. "Apparently. There's a door behind the customer service desk. It's always locked, but Wagner has the key." I rubbed my eyes, trying to process this. "Joyce, these rules keep expanding. Wagner knows what's going on. He has to." "I think so too," she agreed. "This isn't just some corporate bullshit. He's hiding something big." After we hung up, I couldn't get back to sleep. My mind was racing. Why would there suddenly be multiple Johnny Parsonses? Why would Anna's appearance during the day require checking the basement? And why the hell did she know so much about my personal life? I spent the afternoon on my laptop, researching the store. Super Save had been built about 15 years ago, according to their website. But what had been there before? It took some digging through local newspaper archives online, but I finally found it. Before Super Save, the land had been vacant for decades. And before that, Millbrook Psychiatric Facility. The facility had operated from 1971 to 1978, when it was destroyed in a fire. According to the newspaper articles, 12 patients had died in that fire. The facility had been conducting experiments involving sensory deprivation and electromagnetic fields, supposedly therapeutic techniques for severe mental illness. I scrolled through the article, scanning the names of the deceased. My heart stopped when I reached patient number 4, Johnny Parsons, age 32. And there, listed as patient number 7, Anna Gonzalez, age 29. The same names, the same ages. It couldn't be a coincidence. I spent the next 2 days obsessively researching Millbrook, finding whatever scraps of information I could. The experiments had been controversial even back then. There were allegations of unethical practices, of patients being used as guinea pigs for experimental treatments without proper consent. By my 11th shift, I was determined to find answers inside the store itself. I'd noticed something odd about the layout. There were spaces that didn't make sense, areas where the outside dimensions of the building didn't match the inside. During my break, I slipped behind the dairy coolers where I'd noticed a narrow gap between the wall and the refrigeration units. It was tight, but I managed to squeeze through. Behind it was a hallway that shouldn't exist. The walls were institutional green, not Super Save blue. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly glow. I followed the hallway to a door marked Treatment Room 4. Inside was medical equipment, an examination table, monitoring devices, even an EEG machine, but they weren't old, abandoned equipment from the 1970s. According to the serial numbers, these had been manufactured within the last 5 years. Someone was still conducting experiments here. Another room contained filing cabinets. I pulled open a drawer labeled Employee Records and found folders for dozens of Super Save workers, past and present. Many were marked Failed Protocol with termination dates. Others were labeled Successful Integration with no additional information. I found Samantha Soto's file, a cashier who'd quit about 6 months before I started. Except according to her file, she hadn't quit. She'd undergone integration and was now listed as active containment personnel. The same was true for Beverly Palmer and Poppy Farley, 2 other employees who had supposedly transferred to different stores. In another cabinet, I found corporate logs detailing the installation and maintenance of containment technology throughout the building. The most recent entry was from just last week, something about reinforcing dimensional barriers in Section 8. Whatever system they had built here, they were actively maintaining and strengthening it. I was so engrossed in the files that I almost didn't hear the footsteps approaching. I shoved everything back into the cabinets and ducked behind a storage shelf just as the door opened. Ernest Wagner walked in, followed by someone in a corporate blazer I didn't recognize. They were discussing protocol violations and increasing instability. "The night shift employee is becoming problematic," Wagner said. "He's asking questions." "Can he be integrated?" the corporate person asked. Wagner shook his head. "Not yet. We need to assess his compatibility first. The last 3 failed integration attempts have only made things worse." "We can't afford another failure," the corporate person said. "If containment collapses completely..." They moved out of earshot, continuing down the hallway. I waited until I couldn't hear them anymore, then slipped out and made my way back to the store. My mind was reeling. Integration, containment, dimensional barriers. None of it made sense, yet all of it seemed connected to the strange rules we had to follow and the entities that appeared in the store. One thing was clear: Super Save wasn't just a store. It was built specifically to contain something that had escaped from Millbrook Psychiatric Facility when it burned down in 1978. Something that couldn't be destroyed, only managed. And somehow the employees were part of that containment system. As I emerged from behind the dairy coolers, my phone buzzed with a text from Joyce. "Be careful. Something's changing. They're watching us now." I looked up at the security camera in the corner. It swiveled to focus directly on me, its red light blinking like a warning. I'd been thinking about breaking into Wagner's office for days. The idea had been growing in my head like a tumor since Joyce showed me her rule card. all those weird protocols, the crying, the power outages, Johnny Parsons in his blue jacket. None of it made any sense. But Wagner knew. I was sure of it. My 12th shift started at 11 p.m., but I showed up at 10:15. I parked my car at the far end of the lot behind the garden center where the cameras didn't reach. The employee entrance was locked, but I'd noticed the fire exit by the loading dock had a broken latch. The night crew propped it open with a brick when they took smoke breaks. The brick was there, just like I'd hoped. I slipped inside, my heart hammering against my ribs. The store was quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of the night crew unloading pallets. Wagner wouldn't arrive until 6 a.m. I had time. His office was behind customer service, a cramped room with blinds always drawn. The door was locked, but I'd borrowed Janet's master key during my last shift. She always left it in her locker during breaks. The key slid in smoothly. I turned it, holding my breath as the lock clicked. I pushed the door open and slipped inside, closing it behind me. Wagner's office smelled like coffee and cheap cologne. A desk lamp cast yellow light over stacks of paperwork. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I figured I'd know it when I saw it. I started with his filing cabinet. Employee records, inventory sheets, corporate memos, nothing unusual. Then I tried his desk drawers. The top two were unlocked, containing only office supplies and a half-eaten pack of mints. The bottom drawer was locked. Bingo. I tried Janet's key, but it didn't fit. I looked around the office for anything I could use to pick it. On Wagner's desk was a letter opener, one of those fancy metal ones with a pointed tip. It wasn't ideal, but it might work. After 5 minutes of fumbling, the lock gave way. Inside the drawer was a laptop, a hard drive, and a thick manila folder labeled Containment Protocols. My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside were letters, dozens of them, exchanged between Wagner and someone named Daniels at corporate headquarters. The earliest was dated 2003, the year the store opened. The first letter made my blood run cold. Mr. Wagner, congratulations on your appointment as manager of SuperSave NER 247. As discussed in your orientation, this location requires special attention due to its unique containment responsibilities. The dimensional stability of the site remains our primary concern. Monthly assessments indicate current protocols are maintaining acceptable containment levels, but vigilance is required. Remember, our goal is management, not elimination. Previous attempts at neutralization have only scattered the entities further. Daniel's Director of Special Locations. I flipped through more letters, my heart racing. They all mentioned containment protocols and dimensional stability. One from 2015 caught my eye. Wagner, the incident with employee number 4721 is regrettable but not unexpected. Integration success rates remain at approximately 60%. Please remind staff that protocol adherence is not optional. It is the only barrier between containment and catastrophic breach. The 1978 experiments created conditions we cannot reverse, only manage. SuperSave NER 247 was specifically designed to contain what we cannot destroy. Daniels. The 1978 experiments, the psychiatric facility. It was all connected. I found a memo from 2018 that spelled it out. Confidential Millbrook Containment Summary. The 1978 Millbrook Psychiatric Facility experiments in consciousness expansion and dimensional perception resulted in unexpected consequences. Test subjects' consciousness became scattered across dimensional boundaries, creating entities that exist in fragments and manifest under specific conditions. SuperSave NER 247 was constructed with specialized materials and electromagnetic field generators to create a controlled environment. The rule system establishes predictable patterns of manifestation, allowing entities to partially materialize without complete dimensional breach. Under no circumstances should the containment system be deactivated. Complete breach would result in entity dispersal throughout the region with no means of recapture. Daniels. Jesus Christ. The store wasn't just built on the land where the psychiatric facility stood. It was built to contain whatever the hell they created there. I opened the laptop, but it was password protected. The external hard drive, however, wasn't. I plugged it into the laptop and it automatically mounted. The drive contained video files, all dated 1978. I clicked on one labeled Subject for Parsons. The video showed a sterile white room. A man, Johnny Parsons, sat in a chair, electrodes attached to his head. A doctor's voice came from off-camera. Subject 4, Day 17 of electromagnetic field therapy combined with sensory deprivation. Subject has reported increased perception of what he calls the spaces between spaces. Beginning, increased amplitude. Johnny's body suddenly went rigid. His eyes rolled back and he began speaking in multiple voices simultaneously. Some his own, others completely different. The doctor increased the machine's power, and Johnny's form seemed to blur at the edges like a bad TV signal. Subject is showing signs of consciousness diffusion, the doctor noted. Remarkable progress. I closed the video, feeling sick. I opened another file, this one labeled Subject 7 Gonzalez. Anna Gonzalez sat in the same chair, looking much younger than the version I'd seen in the store. The same doctor's voice explained they were testing her ability to project consciousness across dimensional boundaries. As the test progressed, Anna began to flicker in and out of visibility. At one point, the camera captured her in 3 different positions simultaneously, sitting in the chair, standing by the wall, and floating near the ceiling. Subject 7 shows unprecedented ability to fragment and reconstitute across dimensional planes, the doctor noted excitedly. Recommend increasing field strength for next session. I closed the video and sat back, trying to process what I was seeing. The psychiatric facility hadn't just been conducting experiments. They'd been tearing people apart at some fundamental level, scattering their consciousness across dimensions. And then there was the fire. Had it been an accident, or had someone tried to stop the experiments? Either way, it hadn't worked. The patient's consciousness remained fragmented, trapped between dimensions, manifesting as the entities I'd encountered in the store. I dug deeper into the files and found documents explaining why closing the store wasn't an option. A report from 2005 detailed 3 previous attempts to shut down operations, each resulting in catastrophic containment failure, as entities dispersed throughout the surrounding area. The corporation had purchased the land specifically to maintain containment, trying various approaches over decades before establishing the current rule system. The rules weren't just corporate bullshit. They were keeping these entities following predictable patterns within the store's controlled environment. Turn up the radio when you hear crying. Don't make eye contact with the man in the blue jacket. Sit in electronics during power outages. It was all designed to manage interactions with fragments of shattered consciousness. I checked my watch. 4:30 a.m. I still had time before Wagner arrived. I needed to find out what happened to Joyce. I searched through more recent files and found security footage from the past week. I scrolled through until I found footage from Joyce's last shift. The timestamp showed 2:17 p.m., 3 days ago. Joyce was stocking shelves in housewares when 3 identical Johnny Parsonses walked past her. Following her new instructions, she approached them. They turned in unison and spoke to her, though there was no audio on the footage. Joyce nodded and followed them toward the back of the store. The camera switched to show them approaching the locked door behind customer service, the one leading to the basement storage area. One of the Johnnies produced a key, unlocked the door, and all 4 disappeared inside. No other camera showed Joyce leaving the basement. She had simply vanished. I frantically searched through more footage, but there was nothing. Joyce had gone into that basement and never come out. As I was about to give up, I noticed a file labeled Integration Procedures. I opened it and found detailed documentation of something called entity integration. According to the document, some employees became part of the containment system itself, their consciousness merging with entities to create hybrids that could interact with both dimensional states. The process was described as necessary for system maintenance and voluntary, though the quotation marks around voluntary in the document made my skin crawl. The file listed previous successful integrations: Samantha Soto, 2011, Beverly Palmer, 2014, and Poppy Farley, 2017. I'd never met these people, but their employee photos showed normal-looking women. The post-integration photos showed the same women, but something was off about them. Their eyes reflected light strangely, and their expressions seemed vacant. Joyce was undergoing integration right now. If successful, she would help manage entities from inside their dimension. If unsuccessful, the document was vague, only mentioning fragmentation and containment reclassification. I closed the laptop, my mind reeling. The corporation wasn't just containing these entities. They were using employees as fuel for the system, sacrificing them to maintain what they called dimensional stability. As I was putting everything back, I noticed something on the floor near the door, a laminated card. I picked it up and recognized it immediately as Joyce's rule card, but there were new instructions written on it in black marker. If more than 5 Johnny Parsonses appear simultaneously, gather all employees in electronics and wait for integration team. Important update: Ana Gonzalez isn't really Ana Gonzalez anymore. What the hell did that mean? Ana wasn't really Ana? Then who, or what, was she? I heard a key in the lock and froze. The door swung open and Ernest Wagner stood there, his face a mask of resignation rather than surprise. "I wondered when you'd start looking," he said quietly, stepping inside and closing the door. "You've lasted longer than most without breaking protocol." "What happened to Joyce?" I demanded, holding up her rule card. Wagner sighed and sat down heavily in his chair. "Integration. She's becoming part of the system." "What does that mean? Is she dead?" "No, not exactly." Wagner rubbed his eyes. "The containment system requires constant human interaction to prevent complete collapse. The entities need anchors, I suppose you could call them. People who understand both realities." "So you're feeding employees to these things?" "It's not like that," Wagner insisted. "Integration is a merger. Joyce will still exist, just not only in our dimension. She'll help maintain the balance. And if she fails," Wagner's expression darkened, "then she becomes another fragment needing containment. Like Ana? The card says she isn't really Ana anymore." "Ana Gonzalez died in 1978, Wagner said. "What you've seen is a composite entity. Fragments of Ana merged with previous employees who failed integration. She's been collecting them, for lack of a better term." I felt sick. So all these rules, all these protocols, they're just to keep these things trapped here? And you're using us as, what, dimensional duct tape? "It's the only solution we've found that works," Wagner said defensively. "Before the rule system, the entities were unpredictable, dangerous. They'd manifest randomly, cause accidents, disappearances. The rules give them structure, keep them contained within the store. And the corporation just goes along with this, using a retail store as some kind of supernatural prison?" Wagner laughed bitterly. "Goes along with it? They built the store specifically for containment. Super Save number 247 was never meant to be profitable. It's a containment facility disguised as a retail store. The corporation has been managing these entities since the fire. They've tried everything: exorcisms, electromagnetic suppression, even rebuilding the psychiatric facility's equipment to try reversing the process. Nothing worked. This is the only system that's been stable." I thought about all the strange things I'd witnessed in the past few weeks. The crying, Johnny Parsons, Ana Gonzalez, the store rearranging itself. It was all part of this twisted system. "How many employees have you sacrificed?" I asked. 17 since I've been manager," Wagner admitted. "Not all integrations are successful, but enough are to maintain the system." "And you're okay with this? Using people like disposable batteries?" Wagner's face hardened. What's the alternative? Let these entities loose? They're fragments of human consciousness trapped between dimensions, confused and angry. They don't understand what happened to them. They just know they're broken, scattered. The containment system gives them structure, predictability, at the cost of people like Joyce. Yes, Wagner said simply, at that cost. I looked down at the files spread across the desk. Decades of containment, of sacrifice, of a corporation using people to manage a problem they'd created and couldn't solve. What happens now? I asked. Are you going to fire me? Try to integrate me too? Wagner shook his head. No. You know too much now. You'll either follow the protocols with full understanding of why they matter or what, or you'll try to break the system, Wagner said. They all do, eventually. The ones who learn the truth. They think they're saving people, freeing the entities. But they're not. They're just making everything worse. He stood up and gathered the files, returning them to the drawer. Your shift starts in 15 minutes. I suggest you get to work. The rules still apply, Kenny. Maybe even more now that you understand them. I left Wagner's office with my head spinning. The store looked the same. Bright fluorescent lights, neat aisles of products, the night crew finishing their stocking. But now I knew what lurked beneath the surface, in the spaces between spaces. I knew what happened to Joyce, to Samantha, to Beverly and Poppy. I knew what the rules were really for. And I knew the corporation was using us all to maintain a system that required human sacrifice to function. I've been working at Super Save for just over 3 weeks now. 15 shifts of pure fucking weirdness. Tonight was supposed to be routine, if you could call any of this routine. Stock shelves, avoid Johnny, ignore crying, follow the rules. But something felt different the moment I walked in. The fluorescent lights flickered more than usual, buzzing like angry wasps. The air felt thick, almost electric, making the hair on my arms stand up. I clocked in at 10:58 p.m. and grabbed my vest from the break room. Hey, you feel that? I asked Janet, who was counting her register drawer. She didn't look up. Feel what? I don't know. Something's off. Janet just shrugged. It's always off in this place. You get used to it. But this wasn't the normal off. This was worse. I started my shift in sporting goods, organizing the fishing tackle that some day shift asshole had completely fucked up. I was halfway through the spinner baits when the first flicker happened. 1 second I was standing in sporting goods, surrounded by fishing poles and camping gear. The next, I was in what looked like a medical treatment room. Dingy green walls, a metal examination table with leather restraints, and a cart of rusted instruments. What the... Before I could finish, I was back in sporting goods. The fishing lures were still in my hands, but my heart was racing like I just sprinted a mile. I dropped the lures and backed away from the display. Janet? I called out, but there was no answer. The lights flickered again, and this time the whole aisle transformed. The shelves melted away, replaced by long corridors with numbered doors. A sign on the wall read, Millbrook Psychiatric Facility, East Wing. Then it was gone, and I was back in Super Save. I pulled out my phone to call Joyce, but there was no signal. Of course, I headed toward the front of the store, hoping to find Janet or anyone else. As I passed through housewares, I saw him, Johnny Parsons in his blue jacket standing motionless by the blenders. Then I saw another Johnny, identical to the first, by the toasters, and another by the coffee makers, and another. 7 of them. 7 identical Johnny Parsonses, all wearing the same blue jacket, all standing perfectly still. Their heads turned in unison to look at me. Jesus Christ, I whispered, backing away. They spoke in perfect unison, their voices overlapping in a way that made my skin crawl. Kenny Schmidt, they said, we need your help. I kept backing up until I hit a display of pots and pans. Stay away from me. We don't want to hurt you, they said, still in that perfect, terrible unison. We want to be whole again. Help us become whole. Before I could respond, the store flickered again. The Johnnies remained, but the housewares department transformed into what looked like a communal dining area with long tables and metal chairs bolted to the floor. Then back to housewares. Then back to the dining area. Reality was coming apart at the seams. I turned and ran, heading for Wagner's office. He'd know what to do. He had to. As I ran through the grocery section, I saw her. Ana Gonzalez. But not just one Ana, dozens of them. A little girl Ana, maybe 8 years old, sitting cross-legged in the cereal aisle. A teenage Ana leaning against the freezer doors. A middle-aged Ana examining produce. An elderly Ana with a walker by the bakery. Every version of Ana Gonzalez that could have existed was here, scattered throughout the store like some fucked-up family reunion. The little girl Ana looked up at me as I passed. "Are you going to help us, Kenny?" she asked, her voice echoing strangely. I didn't answer. I just kept running. The store continued to shift around me. One moment I'd be running through the grocery aisles, the next I'd be in a padded cell or a doctor's office or a communal shower room. The transitions were getting faster, more violent, like reality itself was having a seizure. Products on the shelves changed too. Modern packaged foods gave way to items from the 70s, then back again. A box of Cheerios became a box of cigarettes, became a bottle of Thorazine, became Cheerios again. I finally reached the front of the store, but Wagner's office wasn't there. Instead, there was a reception desk with a sign-in book and a bell. I rang it desperately. The store flickered, and suddenly, Wagner was standing there, looking terrified. "What the fuck is happening?" I shouted at him. "Containment failure," he said, his voice shaking. "Complete system breakdown. I've never seen it this bad." The walls behind him phased in and out of existence, revealing glimpses of rooms and hallways that shouldn't exist. "How do we fix it?" I asked. Wagner laughed, a high, panicky sound. "Fix it? We can't fix it. This is what I warned you about. This is what happens when people start asking questions, breaking protocols." "Bullshit," I said. "This isn't my fault." "It doesn't matter whose fault it is," Wagner snapped. "The system is failing. The entities are breaking through." As if on cue, all 7 Johnny Parsonses appeared behind me, still moving and speaking as one. "Ernest Wagner," they said. "You know what we need." Wagner backed away. "Stay in your designated areas. Follow the protocols." "The protocols are failing," they replied. "We want to be whole." The store flickered again, and we were suddenly in what looked like a director's office. A large desk covered in files, diplomas on the walls, a nameplate reading Dr. Malcolm Daniels. Then back to the store. "What do they mean they want to be whole?" I asked Wagner. Before he could answer, the little girl Ana appeared beside us. "We're broken," she said simply. "We've been broken for so long." The teenage Ana materialized on my other side. "They broke us apart in the experiments." The elderly Ana appeared behind Wagner. "Then the fire scattered us even further." "What experiments?" I demanded, though I already knew from the files I'd found. Wagner sighed. "Dimensional research. They were trying to access other realities, other versions of our world. They used the patients as test subjects, exposing them to electromagnetic fields that were supposed to allow perception across dimensional boundaries." "But it went wrong," I said. "Very wrong," Wagner agreed. "The fields didn't just allow perception, they fractured the subject's consciousness, spreading fragments of them across multiple dimensions. When the fire happened, it created a quantum event that permanently destabilized the boundaries between those dimensions." The 7 Johnnies spoke again. "We exist everywhere and nowhere. We are scattered. We want to be whole." And that's when it hit me. The revelation was so sudden and so clear that I almost laughed. "The rules," I said. "The fucking rules. They're not containing anything." Wagner's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "The rules, the protocols, They're not keeping these entities contained. They're feeding them. Every interaction, every time we follow a rule about Johnny or Anna, we're giving them more substance, more connection to physical reality. I turned to face the Johnnies. That's it, isn't it? The rules create predictable patterns of interaction. They give you form, substance. They nodded in unison. Yes. I looked at Wagner. You knew this. You in corporate. You've been using us, the employees, as fuel to maintain this system. Wagner's face hardened. It was the only solution we found that worked. The entities need the interactions to maintain coherence. But if those interactions are unpredictable, chaotic, the whole system breaks down. And that's what's happening now, I said. Yes. Something has disrupted the pattern too severely. I looked at the various Annas surrounding us. The child, the teen, the adult, the elderly woman, all the same person, fragmented across time and space. What do you want? I asked them. Do you want to escape? To be free? The elderly Anna shook her head. We want to end. We don't want to exist like this anymore, said the teenage Anna. We want true death, said the child Anna, to stop being fragments. I understood then. They weren't malevolent. They weren't trying to hurt anyone. They were victims, confused, frightened, trapped in a fractured existence for decades. They didn't want to escape into our world. They wanted release from all worlds. The rule cards, I said suddenly. If the rules are what's maintaining the system. Wagner grabbed my arm. Don't even think about it. If you destroy the rules, you'll accelerate the breakdown. The dimensional collapse could spread beyond the store. I pulled away from him. You're lying. You've been lying from the beginning. I turned to the Johnnies. If I destroy the rule cards, what happens to you? We begin to coalesce, they said. Without the patterns forcing us to maintain separate existences, we can merge our fragments. And then we can choose to end. I made my decision. I'm going to help you. Wagner tried to stop me, but I shoved past him. The store continued to flicker and shift around me as I ran to the break room. I grabbed the laminated rule cards posted on the bulletin board, then headed to the manager's office that sometimes appeared where Wagner's office should be. More cards there. I took them all. I ran through the store, collecting every rule card I could find. From storage closets, from the customer service desk, from employee lockers. All while reality deteriorated around me. Walls phased in and out. Floors became ceilings. Products from different decades materialized randomly on shelves. Wagner followed me, shouting warnings that I ignored. The various Annas watched me with hope in their eyes. The Johnnies followed at a distance, still moving as one. Finally, I had them all, at least 20 laminated cards with their bizarre, contradictory rules. I headed for the loading dock at the back of the store. The loading dock kept shifting between its current form and what must have been the crematorium of the old facility. I found a metal trash can and threw all the cards inside. Wagner caught up to me, out of breath. You don't know what you're doing, he gasped. I know exactly what I'm doing, I said. I'm setting them free. I found a lighter in my pocket and flicked it on. The flame seemed to burn with unusual intensity in the unstable air. The corporation will destroy you for this, Wagner warned. Let them try. I dropped the lighter into the trash can. The cards caught fire immediately, burning with an unnatural blue flame. As they turned to ash, something changed in the air around us. The flickering slowed. The transitions between store and facility became less violent. I walked back into the main store area with Wagner reluctantly following. The 7 Johnnies stood in a circle in the center of the store. As we watched, they began to move toward each other, slowly at first, then faster. When they touched, there was no collision. They simply merged, like drops of water coming together. 7 became 6, then 5, then 4, then 3, then 2. Then finally just one Johnny Parsons standing there, looking more solid and real than I'd ever seen him. The same thing was happening with the Annas. The different versions of her from throughout her lifetime were converging, merging into a single form that somehow contained all her ages at once. Not old or young, but complete. Other entities I'd never seen before began emerging from hidden corners of the store. More patients from the 1978 experiments, I assumed. They too began to coalesce. Separate fragments coming together to form whole beings. Wagner watched in astonishment. "This isn't possible," he muttered. "The models predicted catastrophic failure, not this." "Your models were wrong," I said. "Or they lied to you. They didn't want this to happen, because then they'd lose their containment facility." The merged Johnny Parsons approached us. He looked almost normal now, just a man in a blue jacket, no longer the unsettling figure that had haunted the store. "Thank you," he said, his voice now singular. "We can feel ourselves becoming whole." The merged Anna joined him. "The fire scattered us," she said. "The experiments broke us. But now we can finally end." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we fade," Johnny said. "Without the rules to bind us to this place, we'll dissipate naturally. Is that what you want?" Anna nodded. "More than anything." Wagner pulled out his phone. "I need to report this. Total containment breach. They'll send a team." I grabbed the phone from his hand and threw it across the store. "No, let them go." Wagner stared at me, then at the merged entities. 40 years, he said quietly. "I've spent 40 years maintaining this system. And now it's over," I said. The merged entities began to gather near the front of the store. They weren't trying to leave. They were simply standing together, becoming less substantial by the minute. I could see the shelves through them now, their forms growing transparent. "They weren't monsters," I said to Wagner. "They were victims. And your company kept them trapped here, suffering, for decades." Wagner had no response to that. I watched as Johnny and Anna and the others faded further, their expressions peaceful for the first time. They were finally getting what they'd wanted all along. Not escape, but release. An end to their fractured existence. As they disappeared, the store stabilized completely. No more flickering. No more transitions between past and present. Just a normal retail space with fluorescent lights and quiet aisles. Wagner sat down heavily on a nearby display. "Corporate will be here by morning," he said. "They'll try to restart the system." "Let them try," I said. "There's nothing left to contain." I looked around at the ordinary store, now emptied of its extraordinary inhabitants. The psychiatric facility's influence had finally ended. The experimental victims had been granted the release they'd sought for over 40 years. And I had helped them find it. I flung open the emergency exit by the garden center first. The heavy metal door crashed against the outside wall, letting in a rush of cool night air. The alarm should have gone off, one of those ear-splitting, everyone freeze kind of alarms. But nothing happened. The store remained eerily quiet. "What the hell are you doing?" Wagner shouted from behind me, his face red with panic. "Ending this," I said, moving to the next exit. "They don't want to be contained anymore. They want to be free." I jogged across the store to the loading dock, my footsteps echoing through the empty aisles. The massive rolling door was secured with a padlock, but I found the key on the hook where the night crew always left it. The mechanism groaned as I cranked it open, revealing the empty parking lot bathed in moonlight. Wagner followed me, his breathing heavy. "You have no idea what you're doing. This is 40 years of containment work. You can't just... Watch me." I brushed past him and headed for the front of the store. The automatic doors were locked after hours, but I knew where the override switch was hidden behind the customer service desk. I flipped it, and the doors slid open with a soft hiss. "Kenny, stop!" Wagner grabbed my arm. "If they get out into the town..." I shook him off. "They're not monsters, Wagner. They're victims. They don't want to escape into town. They want to escape existence." The security system was next. I'd watched Wagner punch in the code enough times to memorize it. 47890. The panel beeped as I entered it, and the red light turned green. I hit the master override, disabling all the sensors and cameras. "The lights," I muttered, heading for the electrical panel near the break room. I found the main breakers and flipped them one by one. The fluorescent lights flickered and died, section by section, until only the emergency lights remained, casting everything in a dim blue glow. Wagner stood in the middle of the store, looking lost. "Corporate will be here in hours. They'll restart everything. Let them try." As if on cue, the merged Johnny Parsons appeared at the end of the aisle. He looked more solid than before, but with each step toward the front doors, his edges blurred. By the time he reached the entrance, I could see the parking lot lights through his torso. "Thank you," he said, his voice no longer the monotone I'd grown used to. It sounded human now, relieved. He took one final step through the doorway and dissolved like smoke in a breeze. Anna was next. She walked slowly from the grocery section, no longer flickering between ages. She appeared as a woman in her late 20s, but somehow I could see traces of all her other selves. The child's hopeful eyes, the teenager's defiant posture, the elderly woman's patient smile. She stopped in front of me. "You understood what we needed." "I'm sorry it took so long," I said. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Time means little when you're stretched across dimensions. Anna walked toward the garden center exit, becoming more transparent with each step. By the time she reached the doorway, she was nothing more than morning mist catching the first hints of dawn. Then she was gone. They came from everywhere then, figures I'd never seen before emerging from the shadows between aisles, from behind displays, from the ceiling tiles and floor vents. Men and women in hospital gowns, some with visible injuries, others looking physically whole but with vacant, haunted eyes. The other patients from Millbrook, the ones I'd only read about in those files. They moved silently toward the exits, each becoming less substantial as they approached freedom. Some nodded to me as they passed. Others seemed unaware of my presence, focused only on their escape. All of them faded as they crossed the thresholds, dissolving into the early morning air. Wagner had retreated to his office. I found him frantically dialing his phone. "Yes, this is Ernest Wagner at SuperSave 247. We have a total containment breach. I repeat, total containment breach. All entities are..." He looked up at me, his face pale. "They're gone. They're all gone." I could hear the panicked voice on the other end of the line. "No, they didn't escape into town. They just disappeared." "Yes, I understand. Yes, immediately." He hung up and stared at me. "They're sending a response team. They'll be here within hours." "Let them come," I said. "There's nothing left to contain." I walked back through the store, now eerily normal without the dimensional flickers. Just a big box retail space with empty aisles and silent freezers. No more hospital corridors, no more examination rooms, no more Millbrook. Wagner followed me, his footsteps heavy. "You don't understand what you've done." This was my life's work. "Your life's work was torturing people who should have died 40 years ago. We were containing a dimensional breach. You were prolonging their suffering." The first hints of sunrise filtered through the open doors, painting stripes of gold across the linoleum floor. I sat on the edge of a checkout counter and waited. They arrived 3 hours later, a convoy of unmarked white vans pulling into the parking lot. Men and women in business, casual attire carrying equipment cases that looked too heavy for their size. They swept through the store with handheld devices that beeped and whirred, scanning every corner. A woman with a tight bun and glasses that made her eyes look too big approached me. "You're Kenneth Schmidt?" "Kenny," I corrected. "I'm Dr. Renata Weiss, Director of Containment Operations." She didn't offer her hand. "I understand you're responsible for this situation. If by situation you mean freeing people who were trapped for 40 years, then yeah, that was me." Her mouth tightened. "Mr. Schmidt, do you have any idea of the damage you've caused? The potential risk to reality itself?" "They're gone," I said. "They wanted to be gone. Your containment wasn't helping them. It was feeding off them." A man in a charcoal suit joined us, his face a mask of corporate displeasure. "We've completed the sweep, Dr. Weiss. We're only getting residual readings. The entities have fully dispersed." Dr. Weiss closed her eyes briefly. Damn it. The interrogation lasted for hours. They put me in Wagner's office, a different suit coming in every 30 minutes with the same questions. How did I know about the entities? What exactly had I done to disrupt the containment? Did I understand the legal implications of my actions? I told them everything, about finding Wagner's files, about burning the rule cards, about opening the doors. I had nothing to hide. "You realize we could charge you with criminal trespassing, destruction of company property, and corporate espionage?" said a balding man whose name tag read Daniels. "For burning some index cards? Go ahead." I leaned back in the chair. "I'm sure the press would love to hear about your company's secret containment facility built on the site of unethical human experiments." Daniel's face flushed. "Are you threatening us, Mr. Schmidt?" "Just stating facts." They left me alone after that. Through the office window, I could see them packing up their equipment, their faces grim. More suits arrived, executives based on their expensive watches and the way everyone else deferred to them. They huddled with Wagner and Dr. Weiss, gesturing angrily. Finally, Daniels returned with a manila envelope. "Your final paycheck, including 2 weeks severance." He dropped it on the desk. "Your employment with SuperSave is terminated, effective immediately. You are not to discuss anything you've seen or experienced here with anyone. Is that clear?" "Crystal." "Mr. Wagner has also been terminated. The store will be permanently closed as of today." I picked up the envelope. "What about Joyce Webster? She was undergoing integration." Daniels looked uncomfortable. "Ms. Webster has been found in her vehicle in the parking lot. The integration process appears to have reversed when the entities dispersed. She's disoriented but physically unharmed." I nodded, relieved. "Can I see her?" "You may collect your personal belongings and leave the premises. That's all." Dawn had given way to full mourning by the time they let me go. Security watched as I emptied my locker. Not that I had much to take, just a spare shirt and a paperback I'd been reading on breaks. Joyce was sitting in her car, a blue Honda Civic parked near the garden center. I tapped on her window and she looked up, her eyes clearing when she saw me. "Kenny?" She rolled down the window. "What happened? I can't remember the last 3 days." "It's a long story," I said, "but it's over now. They're gone." She rubbed her temples. "I remember following those Johnnies to the basement and then nothing. They were trying to make you part of the system. But when the entities left, the integration reversed. They fired me," she said, holding up a similar manila envelope to mine. "Said the store is closing permanently." I nodded toward the building. "Want to get your stuff? I'll help you." We walked back in together, ignoring the glares from security. The store felt empty now, truly empty, not just of customers, but of presence. The air was still. The lights were ordinary. Just a failing retail store with too many aisles and not enough sales. Wagner sat in his office, staring at a stack of containment logs. He didn't look up as we passed. "What will happen to him?" Joyce asked as we emptied her locker. "Same as us, I guess. Fired and forgotten." We walked out together into the bright morning light. The parking lot was half filled with corporate vehicles and a few employee cars. It looked so normal, just asphalt and white lines and shopping carts. I took one last look at Super Save 247, at its big red sign and automatic doors. Just a store now, not a prison, not a containment facility, just brick and glass and metal. "What will you do now?" Joyce asked. I shrugged. "Leave town. Start over somewhere new. You?" "Same, I think." She smiled weakly. Hard to go back to normal retail after this. We said our goodbyes in the parking lot, promising to stay in touch, but both knowing we probably wouldn't. Some experiences are better left behind. As I walked to my car, I glanced back at the store one final time. In the morning sun, it looked smaller somehow, less significant. Just another big box retailer going out of business in a struggling economy. The entities were gone. The experiments were over. 40 years of suffering had finally ended. I got in my car and drove away, leaving Super Save 247 in my rearview mirror. I found Joyce sitting in her car in the parking lot, staring blankly through the windshield. Her blue Honda Civic was parked near the garden center, as far from the main entrance as possible. The morning sun glinted off the hood, making me squint as I approached. I tapped on the window. She jumped, then relaxed when she saw it was me. She rolled down the window, her face pale and drawn. "Kenny," she said, like she was testing out my name. "What happened? I can't remember anything." "You've been gone for 3 days," I said. "Do you remember anything at all?" She shook her head slowly. "I remember following those copies of Johnny to the basement. Then nothing until I woke up here in my car about an hour ago." She rubbed her temples. "My head feels weird. Like empty. Like something was there and now it's not." "The integration reversed," I explained. "When the entities disappeared, whatever was happening to you just stopped." Joyce looked at me, confusion clear in her eyes. "Integration? What are you talking about?" I leaned against her car. "It's a long story. The short version is that those things, Johnny, Anna, all of them, they're gone now. For good." "Gone where?" "I don't know. Just gone. They wanted to stop existing, and I helped them do that." Joyce stared at her hands, flexing her fingers like she was making sure they still worked. "I feel like I almost became something else," she whispered. "Something not human." "You did," I said. "But you're okay now. We both got fired, by the way." That got a small laugh out of her. "Of course we did. You want to get your stuff? There's a bunch of corporate types in there cleaning house, but they said we could get our personal belongings." She nodded and got out of the car. She seemed steady enough, but I stayed close as we walked back toward the store. "They're shutting it down," I told her. "The whole store. For good." "Good," she said firmly. The automatic doors slid open with a normal mechanical hiss. No weird energy, no dimensional flickers, just a regular shitty retail store. Except for the dozen or so people in business casual attire carrying equipment cases and scanning every inch of the place. A security guy in a black polo shirt materialized beside us. "You need to collect your belongings and exit the premises," he said flatly. "Yeah, we know," I replied, just heading to the break room. He followed us, keeping a few paces behind. The store felt hollow now, like a movie set. All the products were still there, but something fundamental had changed. The air felt lighter. We passed Wagner's office on the way. The door was open and I could see him sitting at his desk, staring at a stack of papers. His tie was loose, his shirt rumpled. He didn't look up as we passed. "Is that all his containment logs?" Joyce asked quietly. "Yeah, 40 years of work, all for nothing now." "Good," she said again, with more venom this time. The break room was empty. Joyce went to her locker and spun the combination. She pulled out a cardigan, a water bottle, and a framed photo of a golden retriever. That's it? I asked. I don't keep much here, she said. Never felt right. I opened my locker and grabbed my spare shirt and the paperback I'd been reading on breaks. Stephen King seemed fitting somehow. The security guy watched us from the doorway, arms crossed. So what now? Joyce asked as we walked back through the store. I'm leaving town, I said. Got my severance check. Gonna drive south and see where I end up. Smart, she nodded. I think I need to get far away from here too. We passed Wagner again. He still hadn't moved, just sat there staring at the papers like they might suddenly make sense again. You think he'll be okay? Joyce asked. I don't care, I replied honestly. He knew what was happening here. He sacrificed people. Outside, the parking lot was filling up with more unmarked vans. Men and women in suits conferred in small groups, occasionally glancing at the store. We stopped at Joyce's car. Well, she said, I guess this is goodbye. Guess so. We should exchange numbers or something, she suggested, but we both knew we wouldn't stay in touch. Some experiences you just want to leave behind. Sure, I said anyway. We swapped phones and put our numbers in. Take care of yourself, Kenny, she said, getting into her car. You too, Joyce. I watched her drive away, then headed to my own car. I took one last look at Super Save 247, now just an ordinary building with extraordinary secrets. Then I got in my car and left, never looking back. That afternoon, I packed everything I owned, which wasn't much, into my car. The severance check would cover gas and food until I found something new. I headed south with no particular destination in mind, just away from Super Save and everything that had happened there. A month later, I saw an article online. The Super Save building had been demolished. The lot had been paved over for additional parking for the strip mall next door. No trace remained of what had happened there, of the dimensional boundaries that had been broken, of the entities that had been trapped for 40 years. I found a job at a warehouse 2 states away. It was normal in every way, just boxes and forklifts and regular paychecks. No strange protocols, no entities, no dimensional flickers. The safety regulations were about preventing back injuries and forklift accidents, not containing fragments of human consciousness. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wonder if I'd done the right thing. Had I freed those entities or destroyed them? Was releasing them a mercy, or had I simply eliminated them from existence? I'd never know for sure. I also thought about other Super Save stores. Were there more containment sites out there? More trapped entities? More employees being sacrificed to maintain the system? I could have investigated, could have tried to expose it all, but I didn't. Some questions are better left unasked. About 6 months after everything happened, I got an email from Joyce. She'd moved to California, she said, started fresh, got a job at a bookstore. She was relieved to be free of whatever she had nearly transformed into. She thanked me, said she was doing well, and hoped I was too. I read it twice, then deleted it. I deleted all my emails related to Super Save, wiped my search history of anything about Millbrook Psychiatric Facility, and threw away the few notes I'd kept. Better to leave it all behind. Sometimes I dream about that store, about Johnny and Anna and the others, about the dimensional flickers and the psychiatric facility. But the dreams come less frequently now. I heard from a former co-worker that the parking lot where Super Save once stood remains mostly empty, even during the busiest shopping days. People park elsewhere if they can, avoiding that particular spot without knowing why. Some boundaries, once broken, leave marks that can't be seen, but can still be felt. I don't know if I did the right thing. I don't know if those entities found peace or just ceased to exist. I don't know if there are other stores out there, other containment sites, other trapped souls, and I've decided I'm okay with not knowing.